Hi, this is Mass Rundown. If you enjoy movie reviews, short and trailer reactions, you're in the right place. So why not subscribe and hit the like button down below.
Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're looking at the short documentary The Funeral from the Jozi Film Festival. The Funeral is a South African documentary directed by Omelga Mthiyane.
The documentary looks at a family as they make final rites amidst the regulatory restrictions for burials during COVID-19.
So I think starting with this, it's very brave filmmaking. She goes into a family that's just lost their member and goes through the grieving process, the funeral process with them during COVID.
I think the method she chose to use also was very interesting because it's more like a personal narrative of one of the family members.
Yeah.
And I think the person's son.
Yes.
And this just gives it so much more heart. And the way he speaks about his mother, it's so sad.
It is heartbreaking.
And I think because she chose that personal narrative style, it was just so fitting.
If you had looked at the logistics of it and done it from almost a third person, eye in the sky, just telling the tale, it would have lost a lot of that and it wouldn't have felt so personal, so real.
And you wouldn't have felt so integrated in the process.
Yeah.
I think it also just goes to show that during COVID, a lot of things have been affected. And I think a lot of people forget that burial rituals and rites have been changed and suppressed almost.
Yes.
Because we've had such strict regulations on how many people can attend burials. You can't have an awake afterwards because of the South African regulation. And we do have issues with COVID still now. So even though the regulations are a little bit better, there's still a lot of restrictions placed on it. And I think for some people, it's a lot harder than for others.
Yeah.
Because in South Africa, we have a lot of different cultures. And there's a lot of burial rites that need to be done in order for some members to have a proper passage to the afterlife, to become ancestors. And this impedes that passage and that process. And it leaves families kind of wondering, what's happening to our ancestor? What's happening to our loved one? Are they going to be okay?
And you can't get closure like that.
No, you can't. And even, the social distancing, the lack of a wake, it leaves the people grieving alone in a time where you should really be surrounded by family and friends helping you get through this loss. Instead, you're isolated. And I think it's been, 2 years now? So many people have gone through this. So many people have been cut off from the very means of support that you expect them to have during a time like this and that they need during a time like this. It's just so exceptionally sad. And I know that there's been some issues with identification of people because of COVID, because there's been a lot of restrictions around people identifying bodies and stuff because they didn't want COVID to spread. And I know the narrator of this speaks a little bit about how some people have been dehumanized because they basically put in plastic bags and stuff.
Like rubbish.
Yeah, almost feels like they're not worthwhile. And I think that just makes the whole grieving process even harder.
One of the scenes that was the most striking for me was at the actual burial. Because of worrying about infection and that, the people lowering the coffin into the ground had masks on, they had overalls on. It almost looked like a construction site as opposed to a burial ground. So almost the respect was taken away and it became a pragmatic, practical disposal as opposed to let's pay our respects and see a loved family member off.
And just be allowed to grieve and throw the dust and flowers and everything that we would normally do.
Yeah.
I think either way though, it's such a lose-lose situation right now because you don't have regulations on funerals and then they become super spreader events, but you have regulations on the funeral and you might cause a lot of psychological and spiritual damage. So yes, the people are now physically safe, but the safety in other areas are being neglected. And I know this is quite a somber topic, but I think it's important topics to explore, to look at how this time has affected everyone and maybe encourage people to do what they can to help it stop.
And the filmmaker does capture it very well. It is respectful.
It just shows you how strong people are also, because people have been coping.
Yeah.
So we can overcome this.
Yes.
Such a difficult topic. Obviously, the family for allowing us to
share in that.
Share, yeah.